Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Ward. I'm going to read today chapter 3 from Sparrow Hawk Red. So remember, as I'm reading, make sure that you're following along either on the screen as I'm pointing to the words with my arrow or in your own book. You can follow along either way. So if you remember at the end of chapter 2, Ricky had just kind of confronted his dad about whether his mom had been murdered. So he's like super upset right now. So chapter 3, Ricky stared at his father accusingly. Benito looked down and brushed at something on his pants. So you were listening. When Ricky did not answer, Benito's voice softened. Oh, mijito, he said sadly, I should have told you, but I was trying to protect you. Who? Who killed Mama? Why would they? Ricky choked on his words. Benito slid a gentle arm around his son's shoulder and led him out across the open desert. For several minutes, he did not speak. 3 years ago, he said finally, I was investigating the Leon cartel, a drug smuggling operation south of the border near Mariposa. I got a phone call one night warning me to back off. Did you? Bunching his lips, Benito shook his head. I didn't. And a week later, your mother had the wreck. We found a loosened steering pin in the wreckage. The DEA thinks it was an accident, but I know in my heart it wasn't. I was the one they were after. It should have been me in the car. Why don't you go get the plane and pay them back for what they did? Benito stopped and looked down. You listened to our whole talk, didn't you? Ricky avoided his father's stare. Losing your mother took the fight out of me, Benito said. I'm done with the DEA. Ricky didn't understand. You always tell me not to be a quitter, he blurted. Don't you miss Mama? I miss her dearly, mijito, Benito said. But every hour of every day. But stealing that plane won't bring her back. Stealing the plane can't be that hard. A 172 Skyhawk is just a big trainer. Papa, you're the one being a quitter. Stop this nonsense, Benito said sharply. You mean someone can kill Mama and get away with it? Dad, a Skyhawk is easy to fly. Benito shook his head, exasperated. Ricky, you think the plane is sitting in a Kmart parking lot with the keys on the dashboard? This isn't a game. These men are killers. I couldn't steal it even if I wanted. Those DEA guys thought you could. They're looking for ways to keep the agency from being involved. They all know it's a suicide job. They like to think Mexican security is second rate. Benito softened his voice, but still it was edged with bitterness. They don't understand Mexican ways. If someone killed Mama, you should go get the plane. The sharpness returned to Benito's face. Then he shook his head. Oh, mijito, Papa, Ricky interrupted, you're always telling me not to quit, not to be a quitter. Then how come you... Ricky's voice trailed off. Benito struggled for words and then stopped. A slight smile crossed his face. You want to talk about quitting? Then let's go up there and talk about quitting. He pointed at the sky. Ricky looked at his father, puzzled. Is the baby full? Benito asked. That question caught Ricky off guard. He nodded. Almost. Remember, they called the plane the baby. Good. We're going to go up and have a talk about quitting. Ricky's thoughts were not on flying. All he could think of was his mother and how somebody had killed her. Let's go, Benito ordered. Ricky didn't want to fly, but reluctantly he followed Benito toward the biplane. Do you want front or back? Benito asked. Most days they argued to sit in the back. That was the control seat. The cockpits had dual controls, but the ignition and most of the instruments were in the back. Without answering, Ricky crawled up front. Benito walked around the baby, giving her a quick pre-flight inspection. Usually they pre-flighted together, checking the flight surfaces, the fuel and oil, looking for nicks on the propeller, making sure the powerful little plane was ready for flight. Instead, Ricky huddled in his seat. This was Dad's idea. Let him get it ready. How about let's put on our shoulder harnesses, Benito hollered, crawling into the rear cockpit. The words caught Ricky's attention. If they went up for normal flight, they only put on regular seatbelts. But when Dad planned on looping or rolling the baby, he insisted on wearing shoulder harnesses. He called it chasing buzzards. Ricky drew the heavy webbing down across his chest and snuggled it tight. Normally, a flight like this filled him with a fevered excitement. Today, he felt empty. He felt like crying. The starter coaxed the polished wood propeller over with a thup, thup, thup. Then a belch of white smoke erupted as the big radical engine growled to life. Ricky smelled the oily exhaust and heard the deafening roar. The dusty heat was suffocating. He slid his goggles on. Benito tapped Ricky's shoulder and motioned toward his radio headset. The headsets allowed them to talk without letting go of the controls. Grudgingly, Ricky pulled on his headgear as they taxied to the runway. He didn't want to talk to anyone right now. After warm-up, the baby Great Lakes thundered down the runway, gaining speed. Blasts of air kicked up tumbleweed and dust in a small storm. Several short bounces cleared them from the ground, and the baby started into a steep, hungry climb. Behind them, the ocotillo and Oregon cactus looked like weeds. They flew in thick silence until the roads were threads stretched across the desert. "Is your harness tight, mijito?" Benito asked, his voice crackling over the headset. Ricky tugged at his harness. Without looking back, he flashed the thumbs-up signal. "Okay, grab your socks. It's showtime." Benito snapped the baby into a long series of rolls. Around and around they flipped. The harness grabbed at Ricky's shoulders each time they twisted upside down. Ricky rested his hand on the control stick, but only so he could feel his dad's strong hand moving deftly, one with the plane, not shoving or forcing, but guiding and encouraging the powerful machine. Dad made it seem so easy. Air whipped past the open cockpit. The wings leveled, and Ricky barely caught his breath before the nose pitched forward, starting a long, whining outside loop. Dad hadn't done one of these in years. Unlike inside loops, which drained blood from the head and sometimes caused blackouts, an outside loop surged blood into the head, causing redouts. I don't know what that is. Ricky hung upside down. Gravity tugged hard to pull him out of the biplane. The harness webbing bit into his shoulders. Crimson patches flooded his vision. Oh, that must be the redout. He sees some red. People who didn't fly would never understand how great his body felt at times like this. It was more fun than anything he had ever known. His whole body grinned under the pressure. This was living. Finishing the outside loop, Benito nosed the baby into a long gliding dive. They settled easily down through the sky. "You see that saguaro cactus ahead to the left?" Benito said. Ricky couldn't avoid grinning. He reached into a zippered pouch beside the seat and pulled out a small paper bag filled with flour. "Milkshake says I get closer," he yelled. "You're first," Benito said, his voice raspy over the headset. "No, go ahead," Ricky answered. "Okay." Benito guided the biplane straight at the cactus in a shallow dive. Ricky peered back. His father held the paper bag outside the open cockpit. The trick was in guessing when to release the little bag. It never fell straight down. At 140 miles per hour, you had to drop the bag early, lobbing it toward the target. This game used to be a bit wilder. For years, Dad dive-bombed neighbors' cars. Yikes. After Ricky started flying, they changed to road crossings and desert cactus. Benito didn't want to teach bad habits. Wind grabbed at Benito's arm. Suddenly he let go. The little packet was snatched away. He pulled out of the dive and banked sharply to the right. Ricky squinted down. Below, on the desert floor, a small puff of white blossomed about 100 feet short of the cactus. "Ha! Beat that!" Benito said. Ricky took the controls. It was easiest for him to hold the bag of flour in his teeth as he climbed. Cutting the throttle, Ricky eased the baby into a long, shallow dive, aimed directly at the same saguaro cactus. "Easy," he told himself. "Not yet. Wait, wait." Air buffeted his face. He kept the nose glued to the target on the desert floor. Easy, not yet. Looming larger, the big saguaro cactus stood, trunks branching out like a giant, showing off its muscles. Just a second longer, Ricky thought. Okay, now. He grabbed the bag from his teeth and threw it into the rushing air, then pulled from the dive and banked sharply. Long seconds passed before another small patch of white mushroomed on the desert floor, closer to the cactus. Ricky let out a whoop, woohoo, and felt a good-natured slap on his shoulder. So they're trying to see who could get closer to the cactus. As they climbed back up, Ricky thought of another game Benito had taught him. Years before, during training in a small closed cockpit Cessna 150, Benito would dive the trainer as fast as a person would fall. For a few seconds, they became weightless. Then he released a marshmallow. As he controlled the dive, the marshmallow floated magically around the cockpit. It took great skill, but before switching over to the baby Great Lakes, Ricky had floated a marshmallow into Dad's mouth. It's crazy. Because he wasn't allowed to tell friends he could fly, Ricky couldn't explain the excitement of feeding Dad a marshmallow. Things like that had to stay his secret. Now, about quitting, Benito shouted, not offering to take back control of the baby. The word surprised Ricky. What about it? He answered bluntly. Let's see a real loop. Ricky felt angry. I'll show you the best loop in Arizona, he snapped as he pulled into a climb. He'd learned to talk cool by listening to Dad. Pilots never spoke as if they were scared. The climb to altitude gave Ricky time to rehearse everything in his mind. Once into the loop, there wasn't time to think. It had to be automatic. And this loop, he wouldn't waffle. At 3,000 feet, Ricky leveled off. Benito spoke. Be deliberate, Mijito. Call me son, Ricky said, not Mijito. There was a moment of silence. Then Benito added, don't rush it, don't waffle it, just do it, announce it. Tell every lizard and buzzard in Arizona what you're planning. Ricky eased the control stick forward, dipping the nose to gain speed. Into the rushing air, he screamed, I'm no quitter. You hear me, lizards? Here's a fat loop. You better duck. With those words, he pulled back on the stick. This time, Ricky kept pulling hard as the nose pitched skyward. Rocketing straight up, he fought the urge to back out. He held the pressure, feeling his body become nearly weightless as they went upside down. Then the plane nosed earthward. Deliberately, he reached out, cutting the throttle. Extra speed would only make the last half harder. From here on, it was a tug of war against gravity. Quickly, speed built, and Ricky grunted against the invisible hand squeezing air from his chest. He blinked at the black patches that flickered and tried to blind him. By entering the loop deliberately, Ricky did not have to struggle as hard coming out of the dive. Soon he leveled the baby. Benito slapped his shoulder and motioned a thumbs-up signal. You'd make a good wingman, he shouted. Not yours, Ricky snapped back. I'm no quitter. He half expected a sharp, reprimanding swat to his head. Instead, there was a hurt silence. Benito did not offer to take back the controls. Ricky banked the plane toward the ranch. He shouldn't have said what he did. Off the left wing, a milky white cloud loomed like a small mountain. Ricky banked the baby along the edge of the white billowy wall, extending his arm to touch it. The solid-looking cloud turned to fog as he neared. It always did. But still, Ricky dreamed that someday his hand would fill with a soft white cotton that he could put in his pocket and save. On the horizon, the landing strip grew larger. Ricky drew in long, deep breaths of fresh air as they descended. He throttled back until the thunder of the big radial engine turned into a muted hum. The baby drifted down for a perfect landing. Ricky could not see the proud smile on his dad's face. After landing, neither of them spoke until the baby was tucked in. Then, walking slowly to the house, Benito reached out and hugged Ricky's shoulders. Nice loop. That's one to be proud of. Ricky could not help but feeling proud. I'll bet Chuck Yeager or John Glenn would have liked it, he said quietly. You bet, and so would the Aztecs and the Mayans, and the Mixtecs and the Olmecs. I know, Ricky mimicked, and the Toltecs and the Zapotecs. Did I forget any? He had heard this pitch before. These were his ancestors. Yes, you did. There was Montezuma and Zapata and hundreds more. Don't forget them. They would be proud of you, so be proud of them. Benito drew Ricky into his strong arms as if hugging the invisible people. Feel them, Ricardo, feel them. They were brave people. They made you what you are. Remember them. I'll bet Mama saw the loop, Ricky said, pushing away from his dad. Benito did not answer. The shock and the hurt crashed back in around Ricky. Someone had killed his mother. It felt as if she had died all over again. Why didn't Dad do something? Ricky wanted to be alone. He went straight to his room, closed the door, and flopped down on his big waterbed. He looked around at the walls covered with posters. An F-14 Tomcat like the one Dad had flown, a Ford Trimotor, the Space Shuttle Discovery, a Grumman Goose, and his favorite, a picture of the gleaming red baby with him in the cockpit. Today, the posters failed to cheer him. Getting up, he walked to the window and looked out across the desert toward the Mexican border. Somewhere west of Mariposa was the Camacho cattle ranch and an orange and white Cessna 172 Skyhawk. The plane was just a 4-person model of the Cessna 150 he had trained in. It would be easy to fly. An idea prided his thoughts. How could a 13-year-old get close? For a long time, Ricky stared out the window, his thoughts churning. Was there any way he could steal the skyhawk? Oh no! So he has a new idea. He wants to be the one to steal it. All right, I'll see you at chapter 4.